In order to dispel any notion regarding anti-Semitism when one criticizes the policies of Israel, I'd like to read you tonight an article which actually was published in Israel from the Israeli press. And, it seems to me that the 60% of the population or more in Israel is just as much duped as 60% of the population here in America, because they are essentially ruled by the same elites. And so what they hear is essentially what we hear as well. But let me just do some quotations here from this article. And as I say, this comes from the Israeli press. The newspaper is Haaretz, and the writer is Gideon Levy. Israel embarked yesterday on yet another ill-fated war. On July the 16th, 2006, 4 days after the start of the Second Lebanon War, I wrote, "Every neighborhood has one, a loud-mouthed bully who shouldn't be provoked into anger. Not that the bully is not right, we did do some harm to him, but the reaction, what a reaction." 2.5 years later, these words repeat themselves to our horror with chilling precision. With the span of a few hours on Saturday afternoon, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, sowed death and destruction on a scale that the Qassam rockets never approached in all their years. And Operation Cast Lead, this is the current operation, is only in its infancy. Once again, Israel's violent responses, even if there is some justification for them, exceed all proportion and cross every red line of humaneness, morality, international law, and wisdom. What began yesterday in Gaza is a war crime and the foolishness of our country. History's bitter irony. A government that went to a futile war 2 months after its establishment, he's talking about the Omar government. Today, nearly everyone here acknowledges as much, embarks on yet another doomed war 2 months before the end of its term. And don't forget, this is election season in Israel right now. In the interim, the loftiness of peace was on the tip of the tongue of Ehud Olmert, a man who uttered some of the most courageous words ever said by a prime minister. The loftiness of peace on the tip of his tongue, and 2 fruitless wars in his sheath. Joining him is Defense Minister Ehud Barak, the leader of the so-called left-wing party, who plays the role of senior accomplice to this crime. Sounds a little bit like here, doesn't it? Israel did not exhaust the diplomatic processes before embarking yesterday on another dreadful campaign of killing and ruin. The Qassams, the missiles that rained down on the communities near Gaza, turned intolerable, even though they did not sow death. But the response to them needs to be fundamentally different. Diplomatic efforts to restore the ceasefire, the same one that was initially breached, or one should remember, by Israel when it unnecessarily bombed a tunnel. And then, if all those efforts fail, a measured, gradual military response. But no, it's all or nothing. The IDF launched a war yesterday whose end, as usual, and I will trail off with this article for now. Some excerpts as well from Robert Fisk, a long time Middle East correspondent, and you will basically find his articles published in the British press. The blood spattering has its own routine. Yes, Hamas provoked Israel's anger, just as Israel provoked Hamas's anger, which was provoked by Israel, which was provoked by Hamas, which, see what I mean? Hamas fires rockets at Israel. Israel bombs Hamas. Hamas fires more rockets at Israel, and Israel bombs again. Got it? And we demand security for Israel, and rightly, but overlook this massive and utterly disproportionate slaughter by Israel. It was Madeleine Albright who once said that Israel was under siege, as if Palestinian tanks were on the streets of Tel Aviv. And Fisk goes on to say, quite a lot of the dead this weekend appear to have been Hamas members. But what is this supposed to solve? Is Hamas now going to say, wow, this blitz is awesome, we better recognize the state of Israel and fall in line with the Palestinian Authority and lay down our weapons and pray we are taken prisoner, locked up indefinitely, and support a new American peace process in the Middle East? Is that what the Israelis and the Americans and Gordon Brown think Hamas is going to do? Yes, let's remember Hamas's cynicism, the cynicism of all armed groups. Their need for Muslim martyrs is as crucial to them as Israel's need to create them. The lesson Israel thinks it is teaching, come to heal and we will crush you, is not the lesson Hamas is learning. Hamas needs violence, of course, to emphasize the oppression of the Palestinians and relies on Israel to provide it. A few rockets into Israel and Israel obliges. Not a whimper from our Western leadership here. In fact, they're supporting Israel. No word from Obama. He's being silent. The United States has vetoed the UN resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire and condemning Israel in the strongest terms. So all the UN was able to do was to pass the Security Council was only able to pass a non-binding resolution as usual. So that's the bloody picture. I'd also like to point out a video which I favorited on my channel just a couple of days ago by a user named Pierre Elliott Trudeau, which gives you a larger picture into this whole geostrategic game in the Middle East. It's well worth listening to. It's about 16 minutes long. I would recommend it. See you later.